Foreign policy will be in the spotlight at tonight's final presidential debate. Governor Mitt Romney is expected to hit hard on the Obama administration's response to the attack last month in Libya that left 4 Americans dead. President Obama is giving a few hints about how he'll address that topic when it's raised tonight. Joining us now to discuss why foreign policy is such a hot-button issue this election year is Clifford May. Cliff is the president of the Nonpartisan Foundation for Defense of Democracies, which focuses on national security and foreign policy issues. Thanks for being with us on the show today. This is something you know a lot about. Can you just tell us about your work and reporting to then Secretary Rice as far as
sure. The Foundation for Defense of Democracies was set up just after the 9/11 attacks, focusing on national security. My background, most of it actually, is in journalism. I was a New York Times foreign correspondent for others. I did report to Secretary Rice on a committee she had on democratization, and I was part of the Baker-Hamilton Commission on Iraq, if you may recall. But those are not full-time jobs. My full-time job is running a think tank.
Well, let's talk about that think tank, and why do you think it's so important for these two men to discuss foreign policy tonight and for all of us to watch?
Look, there are two things that really should concern voters, and I think do. One is the state of the economy, what's happened over the past 4 years, what's going to happen over the next 4 years. But also consequential is what's going on in the world in terms of foreign policy and national security. The United States was attacked on 9/11. I would argue that there is a global conflict underway by al-Qaeda, but not just by al-Qaeda. Iran has considered itself to be at war with us for more than 30 years. And as you may have seen last week here in Washington, D.C., Mansour al-Absiar, Iranian-born American, pled guilty. He was part of a bomb plot that was going to blow up a restaurant in Georgetown, killing the Saudi ambassador and whoever else happened to be dining that night. And he said, in admitting his guilt on that he was working with the Quds Force, which is the most elite division of the Iranian military. It probably didn't get a lot of coverage, but I think it should. It tells us that we've got some real threats in the world, and we need to have a concept and a strategy to deal with them. I think that's going to be the most important thing we hear tonight, is how both of these candidates are going to deal with these threats over the next 4 years.
With the Libya situation, what should the response be from the president? We, of course, saw Secretary Clinton come out and say, I take the blame, but you know, where does the buck really stop, and how important is this going to be?
Well, I mean, the buck always stops with the president. I think that's just a rule we should all follow, and I don't think President Obama thinks differently on that. Was this a bungle? It was, obviously. You had requests for more security and a reason to believe you would need additional security on the anniversary of 9/11 in a country where you had al-Qaeda affiliates active, and that was no secret. There's a larger issue here that I think Governor Romney did not manage to get at in the last debate. I think he will try, and that is, what didn't we know? What doesn't this administration understand about what's going on in the world? I would argue that the president has been too adamant to say that al-Qaeda is defeated, or at least gravely diminished.
What does this tell us about al-Qaeda?
Well, it tells us that al-Qaeda has changed, it's morphed, but it's not dead. It's not over. Al-Qaeda is alive and doing a lot of damage. Al-Qaeda is up to 140 attacks a week in Iraq right now. Al-Qaeda has boots on the ground in Syria right now. Al-Qaeda was able to not only kill an ambassador in Libya, but also affiliates killed someone in Yemen. And the Al-Qaeda flag was raised over our embassy in Cairo, and we had attacks in dozens of other places. And something else we know last week, the Treasury made very clear, Al-Qaeda and Iran collaborate. For the third time in less than 2 years, Treasury Department designated an Al-Qaeda operative working freely inside Iran, channeling money and channeling terrorist fighters around the world. So you have this odd rivalry and collaboration between Al-Qaeda and Iran. This is the bigger picture. I don't think most people really understand it, and I think it is a place where Romney can make some points if he can express this clearly. I don't know how clearly he understands it.
What is your analysis of each candidate's stance on foreign policy? I mean, is this realistic? Is this something that's achievable? Because it seems to me that the president will be on the defensive with the things that we've talked about. Or does he need to be on the offensive? Where are we now as far as these two candidates?
Well, here's the thing. Romney doesn't have much record in foreign policy. He was a governor, so he has to show that he knows enough about foreign policy that he can handle this portfolio. So far, we've had a a pretty good speech by him. But again, he has no record to defend. That's a weakness, and that's a strength because he's got to show that he's up to the job. As for President Obama, he's had 4 years. I think there's a lot he needs to try to defend in his record. I would also argue that he needs to show that going forward, he has a better understanding. Again, the narrative he has attempted to establish, I've killed Osama bin Laden, therefore al-Qaeda is dead, and the tide of war is receding. I don't think that's a truthful narrative. The tide of war is not receding. Wars are not tides. It doesn't just come in and out. Your enemy can have a say. If the Taliban reestablishes its dominance in Afghanistan, if al-Qaeda continues, and Iran as well, to exert influence and kill people in Iraq, if we see what's happening in Syria get worse, and it's pretty bad right now, and we've got some pretty bad elements, you're seeing people saying it's spilling over into Lebanon. It's not spilling over. Assad is exporting the violence into Lebanon. We have real challenges, and we need to hear, I think, from both candidates what strategy they have for dealing with it over the next 4 years.
It will be must-see television when these two men talk about it. Okay, Clifford May is the president for Foundation of Defense of Democracies. Thanks for spending some time with us this morning.
Allison.
Tony, over to you.